If you're interested in doing higher tier, or if you're just interested in finding out about all the GCSE maths in general, you'll have to know negative and fractional powers. So we've looked at what, say, a square number is, or what a cube is. And in future, we'll have a look at how we can work with them by multiplying them, or how we create different calculations from them. But we also have to understand what a power is if it's a negative number and if it's a fraction. So what is a fractional power exactly? Well, a fractional power is a root. So the example by here is, if we've got 9 to the half, it's the square root of 9. So if we've got 9 to the power of 2, we're squaring it, 9 times 9. And we've seen that in special numbers video. If we do 9 to the half, we do the opposite to it. And the opposite to squaring something is the square root. So doing the square root of 9 is 3. Another example here is 8 to the third. Now, when we do 8 to the 3, that's cubing something. 8 times 8 times 8. Well, we're doing the reverse here, so we do the cube root. As you can, it shows you how you can write that with the root sign and a little 3 up in the air before it. So you do the cube root of 8, i.e. looking at what number is multiplied by itself twice in order to make that, and the answer is 2. So 8 to the third is 2, because 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. And this goes on with any number. 8 to the quarter, 16 to the quarter would be 2, because 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 is 16, and so on. So what if we've got a number, a fraction, which has a numerator and a denominator, in this case 2/3. Those examples I just gave you said a half, a quarter, a third. They all had a denominator, and but the numerator was just 1. So with these ones, you've got two options. You can either use the denominator to do a cube root, in this case, because it's to the 3, and then use the numerator to do a power, to square it in this case, because it's to the power of 2, or you can do the reverse. Because it's easier with this number, I'm going to cube root it first. So I do the cube root of 64. I find out what number multiplied by itself twice is 64. So what number times what number times what number gives you 64. And then I square it. So the root is the denominator, and then I put it to the power of the numerator. So the cube root of 64 is 4. 4 times 4 times 4 is 64. That leaves me with just the power to the power of 2, and 4 to the power of 2, or 4 squared, is 16. So 64 to the power of 2/3 is 16. I used the denominator to do the third root, and then I used the numerator to do it to the power of 2, giving me the answer 16. What's a negative power then? Well, a negative power is the reciprocal, and we just talked about reciprocals in the last video. So for instance, if I've got 4 to the power of -1, it becomes a quarter because we flip it upside down. If I've got 3 to the power of -2, what I'm going to have to do is square it first, because it's to the power of 2, giving me 9. And then I do the reciprocal, 1/9, 1/9. An example by here is half to the power of -2. Looks complicated, but it's not, because all we do is to the power of 2, half times half, giving us a quarter. Then we do the reciprocal, and a quarter flipped upside down becomes 4/1, or just 4. Another little example by here is 4 to the power of -half. Well, for the denominator, like we saw in the fractional powers, the denominator tells us how to root it. So we've got to do the square root of 4 because it's the root to the power of 2, which is the square root of it. So the square root of 4 is 2. However, the answer isn't 2 because it's to the power of minus a half. And that minus tells us the answer we get, we've then got to turn it into its reciprocal. And the reciprocal of 2, if we flip the 2, and remember there's an invisible 1 underneath, if we flip that upside down, the 2 on the top and the 1 underneath becomes 1 on the top and 2 underneath. So that's how we deal with negative and fractional powers. If it's a fractional power, the denominator tells us how many times to root it, or what power to root it to. If it's a negative power, then it tells us we have to find a reciprocal from the answer.